guys, Zander here, and today we're looking at Standard. This is a Sultai Yarok deck that I put together for you guys. I put this together during the spoiler season, and it's really interesting to see the amount of decks that come out looking very similar to it. A lot of different ways to build a very similar deck, and it's really cool to see. But this is my version of a deck that abuses the Flood of Tears and Omniscience. Everyone kind of come to the same conclusion that Flood of Tears makes Omniscience playable, so we're going to talk about this first. So Flood of Tears that we're running in a 4 of is for 6, 4, and 2 blue. At sorcery speed, you return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands, and then if you return 4 or more non-token permanents you control this way, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. The obvious choice being Omniscience. If we've got that in our hand, we want to be playing that out, because then we can play all of our shit for free after that. So Omniscience is for 10, 7, and 3 blue. You may cast spells from your hand without paying their mana costs. So everything that we just bounce back to our hand, we're going to be able to play out for free. And after that, you kind of kick the door wide open on the deck and just pretty much just combo off and then win. The original version of this list, I wasn't running the 2 copies of Mastermind's Acquisition. So Mastermind's Acquisition is for 4, 2, and 2 black at sorcery speed. You choose one. You can search your library for a card and put it in your hand and then shuffle your library. Or you can choose a card from outside the game and put it into your hand. So that allows us to go through our sideboard, grab a card, put it into our hand, and then we can play it out with Omniscience if we've got it out. Or we can tutor for an Omniscience, which is another really cool part of it. That's why it came into the deck. My original version of the list, which wasn't as so this makes it a lot more reliable, being able to help tutor, but my original version of the list was going more for the ETB effects on the Yarok the Desecrated, which is Panharmonicon on a stick. He's insanely cool. For 5, 2, a black, a green, and a blue. He's a 3/5 legendary creature elemental horror with Death Touch and Lifelink, and if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So the reason I mentioned the Mastermind's Acquisition not being in the original version of the deck is because I was running Spark Double, which comes in as a copy of a Planeswalker or creature, except it's not legendary, which means we could double up or triple the effects on the Yarok. The rest of the deck is a lot of ETB effects and recursion, so that we can get our key pieces back after we've played them, or if they get answered as we're playing them. A lot of people have been steering away from putting the cards that are rotating out into any version of this deck. I can understand why, but for the moment they're in standard, so I don't know why you wouldn't. And a lot of people are also really sick of just seeing the Explorer package, which of course is the 4 copies of Wildgrowth Walker, which is for 2, 1 and a green. He's a 1/3 elemental, going with the elemental theme that's also going through the deck. And then whenever a creature you control explores, you put a +1/+1 counter on Wildgrowth Walker, and you gain 3 life. So for that effect to matter, we're also running 3 copies of Jadelight Ranger for 3, 1 and 2 green. It's a 2/1 Merfolk Scout. When it enters the battlefield, it explores, and then it explores again. And 3 copies of Merfolk Branch Walker, which is for 2, 1 and a green. A 2/1 Merfolk Scout. When it enters the battlefield, it explores. With the Yarok out, being able to get double triggers means we're going to double the amount of times we explore, as well as doubling the effect on the Wildgrowth Walker. So the amount of life gain that we can get out of it is insane. The big reason at the moment to be running the elemental theme through the deck is the 4 copies of Risen Reef, which is for 3, 1, a green, and a blue. It's a 1/1 elemental, and when it or another elemental enters the battlefield under your control, you look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put that card onto the battlefield tapped, and then if you don't put the card onto the battlefield, put it into your hand. The amount of ramp and card advantage that one of these can give us is great. If we have multiple out, it's really good. And when we start playing elementals after we've got a Yarok out, it goes insane. Adding to the ramp and also the elemental theme, we have 4 copies of Leafkin Druid, which is for 2, 1 and a green. It's a 0/3 elemental druid with tap, add 1 green, and if you control 4 or more creatures, you tap and add 2 green instead, which allows us to ramp out our more expensive stuff earlier in the game and also adds to the elemental tribal. 3 copies of Tamio, Collector of Tales, which is for 4, 2, a green, and a blue. She's a 5 loyalty planeswalker with spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause you to discard or sacrifice permanents. Her +1 ability is choose an on-land card name, reveal the top 4 cards of your library, and put all cards with the chosen name from among them into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard. And her -3 ability is return target card from your graveyard to your hand, which allows us to play a Flood of Tears, bounce back the Tamio, play the Omniscience, play the Tamio out, and then -3, get back the Flood of Tears, which allows us to get into this seemingly infinite loop of being able to bounce back all of our stuff and then play it out for free because of Omniscience, which is relevant with the 2 copies of Agent of Treachery, which is for 7, 5, and 2 blue. It's a 2/3 human rogue. When it enters the battlefield, you gain control of target permanent. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents you don't own, you draw 3 cards. So if we go into the loop, or even just being able to play Omniscience and then play this guy for free, gaining control of permanents is really cool. But if we can get into the play Flood and loop with Tamiyo, then we can just gain control of all of our opponent's lands, which is an alternate win con for the deck. 2 copies of Drawn from Dreams, which is for 4, 2 and 2 blue. At sorcery speed, you look at the top 7 cards of your library, you put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Digging 7 cards into our deck, insanely cool. It's definitely going to be going a long way to be finding our combo pieces, which is really good. Touching on the land base here, 4 copies of Breeding Pool, which is a forest island, comes in tapped unless you pay 2 life. 4 copies of Hinterland Harbour, comes in tapped unless you control a forest or island. 4 copies of Overgrown Tomb, which is a forest swamp, comes in tapped unless you pay 2 life. 2 copies of Woodland Cemetery, and 3 copies of Drowned Catacombs, which come in tapped unless you control a swamp or forest, or an island or swamp. 3 copies of Watery Grave, which comes in tapped unless you pay 2 life. Playing some of the new Scry Temples, which come in tapped, and they scry 1. 2 are the one that taps for black or green, and 2 are the one that taps for green or blue. And to finish off the land base, a single forest. Touching on the sideboard here, I can't really take too much credit for the sideboard here. It's kind of an amalgamation of like 4 or 5 other decks that I saw after creating the main board for my deck. Kind of picking and choosing the cards that I thought were best for what I was trying to do. So you can see here we're running another copy of Omniscience. We've got another Tamiyo in the sideboard here, allowing us to tutor them from our sideboard with the Masterminds acquisition. 3 copies of Recollect, which is for 3, 2, and a green. At sorcery speed, you return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Good in the control matchups, giving us another way to recur stuff from the grave. 3 copies of Root Snare, which is for 2, 1, and a green. It's at instant speed. You prevent all combat damage that will be dealt this turn. This is something that I've been seeing a lot in the main decks. Instead of running the Explore package, they're running a lot more of the I prevent stuff and I draw cards and do all that kind of stuff. So the Root Snare is something that's run in the main decks, obviously, for the aggro matchups, but I felt like running it in the sideboard and being able to tutor it, or being able to go game 2 and then have it in there if you need it, I just felt like that was a better option for me personally. 2 copies of the Elder Spell, which is for 2 black. At sorcery speed, you destroy any number of target planeswalkers. Choose a planeswalker you control, and then put 2 loyalty counters on it for each planeswalker destroyed this way. Planeswalkers being such a problem in Standard at the moment, definitely something we want to be able to get. 2 copies of Cry of the Canarium, which is really good in the aggro matchups. For 3, 1, and 2 black. At sorcery speed, all creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn, and then exile all creature cards in graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. If a creature would die this turn, exile it instead. The 2 copies of Spark Double, because I still wanted to have that synergy that I was able to dig for if I wanted to, so I can actually tutor this out with the Masterminds acquisition. I just thought the interaction between Spark Double and the Yarok was too cool not to have available to me, at least. And to finish off the sideboard here, something I thought was hilarious as a sideboard piece was a single copy of Zakama Primal Calamity, which is for 9, 6, a red, a green, and a white. It's a 9/9 legendary creature Elder Dinosaur with Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you untap all lands you control, and then it's got pay 2 and a red to deal 3 damage to target creature, pay 2 and a green to destroy target artifact or enchantment, or you can pay 2 and a white and gain 3 life. So it is very much win more, but if there's an artifact or enchantment that's stopping us from being able to win the game, this could really help us get through. We obviously can't play it unless we have Omniscience out because it's so off color. Being able to tutor out as a karma, play it out, just being able to beat face with it. I thought it was too funny not to have it in there. But that is the sideboard, and that is the main board, and that is Sultai Yarok in Standard. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to see new videos as they were released. If you like what I do and you want to support the channel, you can throw me $1 on my Patreon at patreon.com/ZandersQuest. And I will see you guys in the next video. Keep questing, guys.